Liam,
Beautiful.
welcome back. It
Thank
is
you,
a
Jesse.
pleasure to be recapping another week of football with you. How are you? How was your Easter festivities?
My Easter festivities were quite lovely, thank you, Jesse. I got back from a trip up north to Seabird, little beachside town up north of Perth, and so that meant today I had to do a whole lot of footy watching to make sure I was up to date and ready to talk about all the games that have happened this weekend. How about you, my friend? How was your little Easter weekend?
Well, my Easter weekend was made good by the fact I could finally get my hands on some footy cards. Long overdue.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very exciting. Got my Luke Jackson footy card to start off proceedings, so very happy with that. But no, Easter was very nice. No, just a normal one, but you know what? We take it.
Regular Jacko, all right.
Just regular old Jacko. Some action Jackson, you may say. But no, very, very good Easter. Plenty of chocolate consumed.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to now getting over the hump of the opening round shenanigans and then the subsequent hump of gather round and then into what I consider to be the season proper.
Well, don't forget, we still have one set of buys to happen after gather round. Collingwood and one other team have yet to have their buy from opening round. So we'll take a pause on we'll take a pause on the buys for gather round and then straight back get into it in round five. But listen, it's been a big week and a bit in footy. Lots going on, lots happening outside of the actual games proper. If you guys didn't listen to it, by the way, at Dodgy Punts, you can find us on Instagram and on YouTube as always, and of course on Spotify and all your leading podcast providers. But last week we gave a little special bonus episode to the news that dropped, the shocking allegations around the AFL drug cover-up scandal, the saga. Another one. Any updates on it, Jesse? What's going on with it all?
Well, about an hour after we published that, it came out that there was up to 100 players that allegedly had tests covered up, so an average of 5 per team. So I've had great fun speculating off camera and off the record which players I think might be the 5 from each team on average.
Okay.
But I think it really leans into the fact that this is a colossal integrity problem that's now becoming a trust problem with the wider public, because very simply, without getting pearl clutchy, hundreds of thousands of kids around this country look up to these players. I don't think that indiscretion washing is the right message to be sending. So let's be honest, most of these kids are probably going to suck at football anyway. They're probably not going to play in the AFL. They're going to have to get real jobs in real workplaces that if you fail a drug test, you're in all sorts of trouble. So I don't like the message this is sending, and it'll be very interesting to see how the public trust over the coming 6 to 12 months, if there is any change to it. I don't envy Andrew Dillon's job in the next year for a number of reasons, this now being one of the main ones. Liam, what's been your retrospective on the news dropping?
Well, it's funny because I've been trying to keep up to date with all the news that's happening, and I haven't really seen any further real updates about it outside of opinion pieces and people putting their thoughts out there as we did. Obviously everyone's entitled to have their say on it, but obviously it's created quite the echo chamber of people getting into their own viewpoints and just staying in that viewpoint, which is obviously what the internet does. Unfortunately, you can't really have proper discourse about it across the spectrum, but you see people leaning into the mental health side of things, which is fine. Like we said in our little extra episode, it's important to talk about that kind of stuff. But I still haven't seen any kind of, I don't know, any sort of remorse or anything in the sense that this has been covering up a pretty large issue in the game outside of the mental health stuff, but just covering these results and covering these actions from a larger governing body who's meant to kind of keep the integrity of sport across the entire globe. That's the issue for me. And I haven't really seen too much worth talking about, unfortunately, throughout this week. I haven't heard there's been nothing additional kind of out from anybody. It's kind of oh, well, we know about this now. Let's get on with the footy. So it's been an interesting one, but I think we did see how the ramifications of this story kind of played out a little bit with Clayton Oliver this week. Something happened with him throughout the week that's got everyone talking, apparently.
Yeah, he's had been sent for some tests on his hand, which has sparked a bit of discussion as to whether that is actually a test for his hands or actually something else. And look, Clayton is the victim of his own circumstances here, many of which he needs to own up to and be an adult about. However, I think this highlights now a persistent problem we're going to have, which is why are players being managed this week? Does player X actually have hamstring awareness, or does he have nightclub bathroom awareness? That's the problem we're now facing here, and it's probably going to be an issue that dogs the competition like a bad smell, certainly for the rest of the season.
Well, Clayton played this week, hands strapped up, right? But this is the issue it kind of raises now. It's like if you have an injury that does need a week or maybe two to recuperate from, that's just going to be the knock-on now. The knock-on's going to be like, oh, is that what it is? And it's a shame because there's obviously this game is a hard sport to play. There's going to be niggling injuries all the time. There's going to be things that you need to be managed for. But I mean, even in the Geelong game that just finished now, I heard someone talking about Geelong going back to GMHBA Stadium and starting to manage some of their older players. And already my brain was like, oh, what does that mean? Like it's already changed the frame of mind around some of the vernacular that we use in this sport. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of plays out, pushes forward.
It's worth just underlining that point, Liam, with the fact that it's not just an issue of are these players, saying they've got a sore knee when they don't. They're on drugs. That was the allegation in Parliament. Like this isn't a joining two ships passing in the night that have no correlation to each other that are carrying opposite flags. These are two ships from the same fleet. As in, they've been put out by the same shipyard. They've been sent out to sea. It's like the Titanic and the sister ship. They're both going to sink. They're just interconnected now because that's the allegation in Parliament. And until the allegation is thoroughly disproven, in my opinion, certainly by an independent body, this allegation is going to stick for a lot of people. And fairly or not, it is going to impact reputations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just going to be it's just the nature of the beast now, unfortunately, with the fallout from all of this. But I mean, at this stage, I don't think there's really too much else to add because there's nothing really much else to add in relation to that. So time will tell, as you said. If this goes the way it's going to go and it needs an investigation, then yeah, it's going to be it's going to have to just rip the carpet up and just see what's underneath. I think it's going to be the best way to do it, and then start this thing afresh. Now, let's move on to something else that I think is going to be a bit more prevalent in the coming weeks. I don't know why. I've just got a feeling that it's going to look. I'm going to put a little bit of a conspiracy hat on, right? Now, I love a good conspiracy theory. Now, I don't believe this in any sense of the imagination, but I had a thought today, and you know what you do when you have thoughts? You tell everyone about them, obviously. You never keep them in your own head.
We should start a podcast, Liam.
What's that? It's called, yeah, we should. What should we call it? Conspiracy Central. Dodgy Punts presents Conspiracy Central.
Dodgy Thoughts?
Dodgy Thoughts. I like that. I like that a lot. But do you reckon we're going to see a lot more clubs being put under the microscope for other indiscretions and other issues for the next month or so, just to kind of take the rub and the shine away from this other massive story just a little bit? Because now we've got... You go on, Jesse. Your thoughts on my my whack job conspiracy theory?
Only quickly jumping in because I am not a conspiracy theorist. I believe that the simplest explanation is always the right one, but that thought did actually cross my mind when the story leaked to the Herald Sun, is that, wow, this is perfect timing for the AFL, just like the Tasmanian announcement was perfect timing off the back of the concussion lawsuit finally hitting court for Liam Picken. So I'm going to let you take over again, but I also independently had the same thought as well.
Yeah, it's clever marketing strategy. It's clever business strategy to kind of do that if that's what's actually happening. Take the shine, take the rub away, get the attention across from something else to something else, like what's happening in Brisbane at the moment. So apparently there was a big to-do about a rift in the player group on the back of a trip to allegedly Vegas, maybe not, last year.
I think that's been disproven now. It
has been disproven, but this is what I like though, because on SEN Radio were talking about this the other day, and they were talking about how they were never in Vegas. They were never in Vegas, but they were in the United States of America, but they weren't in Vegas. Yep. So that one little bit of the story kind of makes everyone go, well, is it true? Is it not true? Anyway, but we're talking about like how player issues, obviously Brisbane have not had the best start to the year. And And I'm finding that we're probably diving into this story, and I say we as a collective across the whole spectrum of AFL, potentially a little bit too deeply. So from a perspective of if there are issues going on with players and their partners and their potential issue, but their partners outside, is that really any of our business? Probably not. But it's a really good talking point. Obviously, you've got Lachie Neale and who's the co-captain for Brisbane? Sorry, Jesse. I know Lachie Neale's one. Harris Andrews,
isn't it?
Harris Andrews.
Put me under the cosh there.
I know, and I still gave the answer, and I was right. Again, I'm not trusting myself here. I've got to trust myself more. But they were called in saying, crisis talks. Are the players in crisis? Is everyone getting along fine? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. We're just having a bit of form issues. So here we are in this instance where, do we know what's happening? Should we know? Do we care? Or is it just a nice little story to talk about? What are your thoughts on the old Brizzy situation?
Well, I think the overarching issue for me here is that, the timing. If this has been known since November, it should have come out early. But the fact is, and again, without being sued, the Herald Sun broke this, sue them, not us. The fact that the Brisbane Football Club have had to send out executives to speak to the media about this makes me think there is some truth to this story.
Okay.
People we'll call them online detectives. I call them the unemployed. They've done the digging, and they seem to have found links between certain players having deleted posts with their previous girlfriends and the like that were on this trip. Look, people break up all the time for a million and one reasons. It may be related, it may not be related, but I don't think it would be fair to dismiss the allegations of a rift in the playing group, certainly on the basis of the way they're playing, but also with how aggressive the club has seemed to have been with trying to get ahead of the story. Generally with stories that are bullshit, it's let kind of run by said football clubs. Whereas this has been a very, very aware Brisbane strategy towards dealing with this story.
Could that also be a side effect of the initial story, the drug saga thing? Because now everyone's going to have the microscope on them. Could that just be a side effect of that though as well?
Potentially, and we don't know everything that happened on that trip. Now, I'm not accusing any Brisbane players of doing anything, but is there another element to this story that we perhaps don't know yet or won't know in terms of what actually happened over there? Now, that's out of competition at that point in the season, but I don't think it's an unfair statement to say that it is impossible, or it is possible to get your hands on illegal substances in America. Now, again, not an accusation, but we've heard a million and one stories of footy trips post-season with these incidents. I don't think it'd be unfair to say that that is an impossibility for said players to be involved in that kind of activity. But look, ultimately, we don't know. When it comes to the players' personal lives and personal relationships, I don't think we really need to know. But I'd also be really disappointed if this was a sacrifice the pawns to keep the Knights chess style move by the AFL to go and throw these players and these players' partners, whether current or former, under the bus for the sake of distracting from the fact that 100 players have allegedly had positive illicit drug tests covered up. That would be really poor form in my books.
Yeah, 100%. And this is the thing that you touched on as well, is that I didn't know that it was like so long ago that this Brisbane thing actually took place. And they've been through pre-season together, they've been through community cups together, they've been through all of this stuff together since then. And it's only now just coming out that this is what's causing the rift. If Brisbane were 3-0, not 0-3, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It wouldn't even be,
not at all.
It wouldn't even be brought up to anyone. It'll just be what it is until something else happened. They could bring it up and just kind of go, oh, look at this little bit of news I've got. So yeah, it's a bit of a shit situation for Brisbane. Like, for the betterment of the competition, hopefully last year's grand finalists can turn something around, because they're in a bit of strife at the moment. And similarly, like it seems to be all relationship stuff at the moment, because then you got Sydney dropping wicks due to apparent rift with another player, due to the other player's ex-partner and him doing something inappropriate towards her, again, last year apparently. And this is only being brought up and brought into the media's attention now. and they've gone and dropped wicks. Kind of reminds me of the old Connor Blakely, Ed Langdon situation from Freo a few years ago. This could end up leading to one of these players potentially leaving a club. We've seen it happen before. And was this an issue 2 weeks ago? Why is it only coming up now? You know what I mean? Like it's all very,
yeah.
And Sydney trying to get on the front foot by dropping wicks to kind of keep that out of reach of everybody, which has only fueled the fire more. Probably had the reverse effect on the whole situation. It's a very strange time in the AFL outside of the actual games proper. Very strange time.
We usually get a few silly stories each year. It seems like they're all lining up into a big club, and I blame opening round.
It's all
people are going crazy.
We tried something new. We can't do it anymore. Look at all the shenanigans it's causing. No more opening round in the future. It's all their fault. But yeah, so, I mean, not really much else to talk about in the news this week, Jesse, unless you know of something else that's happened that I've missed.
No, I just wanted to mention Tom Hawkins, 350 games.
Yeah.
In my book, he goes down as the second best modern forward behind Lance Franklin. I genuinely think he is that good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has been that dominant now for such a period of time that he deserves that historical relevance when you have that conversation, because he isn't like Franklin in terms of being a freak athlete and a generational talent, but what he is he's such a commanding presence in that forward line that he is the player that you look to for inspiration in a very inspired Geelong period of success. So I think when you look at his premiership medals, when you look at his individual accomplishments, I think he has to go down as one of the greatest players of all time at the Geelong Football Club. And it really seems like Geelong are trying to get him one last flag the way they've started the season, because they have started hot.
Hot. Yeah, look, I don't usually watch much of the pre-game stuff because a lot of the commentators on Fox are unbearable to watch. But they had a nice little piece on Tommy Hawkins at the start of today's game that I watched. And I must admit, I actually lost track of how long he's been playing for. Like when I found out it was his 350th, I was like, damn, he's been around that long? Crikey Moses. Old babyface Tommy Hawkins has been around for, what, nearly 15, 16 years now, which is insane to think about.
And he still does the same really funny facial expressions every time something doesn't go his way on the field. And it will never not be funny. It's great. I love it. The abject horror that an umpire could think that he's done something wrong is brilliant. And I honestly, I think the game is richer for that.
Yeah. No, it's congrats Tommy Hawkins. Massive milestone, massive achievement, and a nice little wet weather win to seal them off today. But we'll get to the big wins later on. We've done the news in record time, Jesse. I'm going to get my little clock up here because you know what time it's time for Jesse's. It's time for Jesse's rant. Now, this is where Jesse, I've not discussed this with Jesse. I have no idea what he's about to talk about. All I do is I put my stopwatch on here. I give him 2 minutes to talk unabridged and angrily about anything he wants. Actually, I'm not going to say angrily. This could be a happy one. I don't know. I'm just going to assume because it's Jesse, it's going to be angry.
The day there's a happy total eclipse of the dart is the day that we've run out of ideas for this show. And it's that may be our Boxing Day test edition, where the only thing to talk about is what players maybe had a beer at the cricket.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I can't wait for that, Jesse. But for right now, I need to see you get mad, see you get angry. Your total eclipse of the dart. 2 minutes begins now.
Liam, I'm frustrated, and I'm very frustrated at the AFL, and I'm very frustrated the way the AFL is treating the umpiring department. Simply put, if we're going to have umpiring at an acceptable standard, which we do not have at this current time, in my opinion, these umpires need to be full-time employees. And what that means is that their midweek time period is dedicated to perfecting their skills. I don't care how that looks. We have enough money as a competition to pay umpires properly where this is their career. It is not their weekend pathway that led them into doing AFL umpiring. It is a genuine career path. So you pay them well, you pay them properly, and you give them the tools to succeed, because there really feels, in my books, like the most intensive frustration towards umpiring since about 2019. Because not only is this the hardest game to umpire, it also seems to be the most inconsistently adjudged game of all time. So I'm not just going to bring a problem to this segment. That's boring. We need to actually have full, proper investment in full-time field umpires, primarily. If you want goal and boundary are a separate conversation, but full-time field umpires, you need to drop it down to 3 umpires per match to stop all the chefs pooing in the broth. It's too much. It needs to stop. But we need to actually commit to umpiring pathways from juniors to AFL that allows professional umpires, once they get to that level, to focus solely on that as their career path, much like we do for AFL players themselves. That's all I have to say.
That's all you have to say. Okay, I'll stop your timer. Now, stop that. Now, it's interesting because obviously we talk about umpiring quite a bit. And I think this year there's a huge focus on umpiring because it hasn't been great. It hasn't been great.
No.
But you've taught me something there, Jesse. You've taught me something there. Last week was the problem. You've come this week with a solution. I appreciate that from you. Thank you so much. But I had absolutely no idea that field umpires and umpires in general were not just employees. I thought they were just hired to do that job. So what you're saying is they have other jobs throughout the day that they do, or throughout the week, and then on the weekends they come and umpire.
Yep. A lot of being sports teachers. I think D Margetts was a sports teacher for the most if not all of his AFL career. Again, fact check that in the comments. I'm pretty sure it was. I know Nick Foote, who's one of the AFL umpires currently, either has or is doing PE teaching. He also has a side gig doing radio as well. He's quite prominent in the racing scene. So a lot of umpires have other jobs because although I'm sure they're paid very well per match for their appearances, that's all well and fine, but we need to actually make it a legitimate career.
Yeah.
Now, I appreciate the argument to that might be, are you going to give them 40 hours of work a week? Look, maybe not. Maybe it's you only come into work game day after for review, couple of days of training, but there's enough data and sports science and technology around to actually give them things to do.
Yeah.
You could treat them like athletes, do stuff like reaction training, get into a simulator. The AFL isn't poor. This isn't the Gascoigne Football League.
Yeah.
We're not rounding up 3 blokes who can't run more than 50 minutes. Say, you 3 have to do the umpiring this week because you can't move. That's not what we're looking at here. These guys are meant to be and are the best at umpiring this specific sport anywhere in the world. So why aren't we giving them the proper tools to actually do their job? And this could veer into a complaint about the ARC and the score review technology. It's not going to do that. But the point is, overall, they don't have the actual tools to succeed in their job. And then in the views of many fans, they themselves come across as looking like tools, which is a problem. Mm-hmm. Because how are we meant to respect the umpires and the job they do as very simple one-eyed fans when that's not really being given to us? Without getting too much into the Freo Adelaide game, I thought the umpiring both ways was absolutely horrendous on Friday night.
It wasn't good.
Absolutely awful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was a particularly bad night for the umpiring group, but it genuinely seemed like they had no idea what decisions they were making.
Do you know what? Can I just jump in there for a sec? This is one thing I've noticed with the AFL as well, is that it's the one sport where I've noticed that each game throughout the week has a different interpretation. It's almost like if you had those full-time umpires who are there all the time, you could have these pre-match meetings where you could discuss things to improve on, things to look at more. And it seems like it's on a game-by-game basis now. So you have a game like Freo versus that, doesn't matter who plays, but they might adjudicate a holding the ball decision differently to the Kangas versus Carlton game. The earlier in that day, because they have a meeting beforehand, say, let's focus on this today. I'm not sure that's how it works, but that's how it seems, because each game seems to be so varied in how things are interpreted. So I
don't mind umpires not being robots and having that varied interpretation, but
100%.
But as you point out, Liam, a lot of the umpiring is generally done within umpiring teams. So these 4 field umpires collectively will do this game, these 4 will do that game, so on and so forth. Much in the same way that Dean Margetts was often part of the WA umpiring team because he himself was a West Australian. So he would do the Fremantle home game one week, the West Coast home game the next week, so on and so forth. Mm. That seems to be similar here. I know Matthew Nichols does a lot of the West Australian games in recent seasons. He's part of that rotation. Nathan Williamson does a lot of West Australian games because he himself is a West Australian. I don't have a problem with that, but I would love to have all the umpires based in one location. and then find out. Virgin are a major partner of the AFL.
Mm.
I'm sure it's not too difficult to get 4 seats on a plane. Well, 3 under my model because we're knocking out one field umpire out of the equation. I'm sure it's not hard to get, quite literally, half a row of the airplane from your major sponsor.
Yeah.
It cannot be that difficult.
No, I agree. And look, it doesn't even have to be a case of it have to all be based on one location. They could all be based in their own home locations and obviously do the switcheroos and fly hither and thither if they need to kind of mix it up, give some variety for the games. That makes sense. But with the technology as it is nowadays, you can have people who are based in Perth still be based in Perth, and you can still have the same meetings. You can still have the same training sessions. You can still have the same vision up on the board. Like Zoom's a thing. Like we're doing this right now.
Yeah.
Like we're not in the same location. So like that doesn't even, like in the same location, doesn't even need to be a thing. But no, I'm actually rather stunned that that they aren't just like employed to do that job. It seems like it would be a no-brainer, especially if you wanted to look at the future of the sport. Like if you're looking to get umpires in the future, if you can have that as a career pathway and be like, okay, I want to get to here. I want to get to here. My eventual goal is to be an AFL umpire, and that's the job. You're going to have a lot more people interested in that as a career vocation. I know a lot of people nowadays, and I don't want to go into like a huge political deep dive about like cost of living and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you want to be an AFL umpire, and the whole thing is you have to have other jobs, then some people are going to say it's too hard. Some people are going to say I have to put too much focus into my life, into paying my bills, and I can't actually have this luxury of, expanding my ability in as an AFL umpire because I just can't afford it. So having it as a full-time job and apprenticeships and all that kind of stuff, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. What are you fact checking, Jesse? What you looking up?
I'm just checking to see if there's any progression on that, because on umpires becoming full-time, and it looks like that was knocked down in the most recent collective bargaining agreement going back to 2022. So I think CBAs are every 3 years. Certainly they are in industries that I've worked in the past or do work in now. So we shall see where that happens, but I worry about that only because this, like I said before, this isn't the Wimmera Football Netball League. This isn't the NTFL. This isn't the Sir Junior Districts Football League. We're not talking bush standard football here. Like the umpires obviously do training each week. I've been to an umpires training session, which covers juniors up to, I think it was up to A1 amateurs was the session I went to. As part of a role I had in the past. And it was very interesting. But, this is stuff that's outside of work hours. These people are tired. They're coming here. We're seeing, I think, a degradation in trust in umpiring, both from the fans and also from the AFL. And I think actually saying, right, these guys are professionals. These are the best in the country, and they're paid accordingly because that's what they are. I think sending an actual message that, hey, these guys are the pros, much like we send that message with the players themselves, will go a long way to instituting better outcomes, both in terms of the quality of the games themselves by way of officiating, and also the level of respect towards umpiring that hopefully can trickle down all the way through to your post-Auskick competitions for juniors.
Yeah. No, I like that, Jesse. I like that a lot. Like it just seems to make a lot of sense. But I guess from a financial standpoint, will the AFL spend that money to do that, or do we keep going? And that could be a reason why we have all these issues with umpiring at the moment, is because if they've got their whole life happening outside of the weekend, and then the weekend is when they've got to do the AFL game, who knows what's going on? They could be stressed with their other job. They could have their mind elsewhere. Who knows?
The AFL cannot cry poor. I'm sorry, but they do not have the right to charge fans what they charge and collect the revenues they collect via TV rights and sponsorships, and then cry poor and say, well, we can't pay. I'm not saying they've done that, but I will not accept that argument if that's turned around.
No, that's not how business works. You know that. Business works in the sense of money in, very little money out. And if that means by not paying umpires more and getting full-time umpires, then why would they do it? You know what I mean? That it's much easier just to back them in and say they're doing a great job rather than change anything holistically. You know what I mean? It's all about the money. It's all about the money. Anyway, hopefully next week we can come back and we can say, look, no umpiring chat this week. I like this week because we came with I say we, I'm just lumping myself in here. You came with a good solution, a good idea. And obviously it's been talked about before, but
Yeah.
it's not just a case of whinging about it this week. Like, I think we both care greatly about this being something that is changed for the better across the whole competition.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of just going, oh, the umpires are shit again. No, like, we understand, like, it's not easy. And I think we've said that pretty well. But I like your idea, Jesse. It's a good one. And hopefully we'll see if there's any traction in that. Probably not, but we can hold out hope. Can't we now? All right.
Definitely can.
We definitely can. Now, we've got 8 games to talk about this week. We're nearly back up to our full complement, which we'll get to next week. But we have a whole bunch of games to get through, starting with what was lovingly termed Spoon Bowl by myself last week. Brisbane 10-12-72, defeated by Collingwood 14-8-92. All right, okay. We're getting back to it now. Now we're starting to see what Collingwood can actually do. I'm not too sure what happened the first 3 games, but finally they look like their old selves a little bit in this game.
They did, and we do need to talk about Collingwood, but we really need to talk about Brisbane.
Okay, we'll talk about Brisbane first.
This is a club on field in absolute freefall. They were horrendous against Fremantle. They completely blew an unblowable lead against Carlton. And here on Thursday night against Collingwood, they spent 3 hours of the game being clearly second best. And this is an almighty problem for them going forward.
I disagree a little bit. I mean, I watched the game and I thought that the game had a high pressure level to it like the grand final did last year. And for, pardon me, for 3 of those quarters, it was quite a close-knit contest. It wasn't until kind of Collingwood put the foot down in the last quarter and took it away and started playing that clutch footy that Collingwood does in the fourth, that when Brisbane started to actually fall away. For me, it was pretty competitive and it was good pressure footy up until that point. But you're saying the whole game?
I'd say the second. I'd stretch to the second half. I'd say the second half, Collingwood took over. But this is the problem. Brisbane started hot against Carlton, blew it. Started hot against Fremantle, blew it. Couldn't run out 4 quarters against Collingwood. This isn't that's not premiership form. That's not top 4 form. It's also not finals form. So Brisbane simply, if they're going to, I know Good Friday was the next day, but if they're going to knock off at 3/4 time, don't bother coming for September because you're not going to win games. It's that simple. They are in massive trouble.
It's going to be a long way back for them. That's absolutely true. But there's one thing that I did notice, and I know that he's always it looks a little bit sad, but Chris Fagan looked especially sad during this game. He looked like he was about to start crying. The poor guy. Someone asked if he is doing okay. He's got a lot on his plate at the moment across the board. Obviously, he's got the inquiry with the Hawthorn situation probably rattling around in the back of his head. His team isn't doing very well. He's probably confused as to why that's happening. He's got the whole issue, the story with the players and the alleged rift between them all. But he looked genuinely like he did not want to be there at all. And I think if that's starting at the coach, and if that's the impression that we're getting from him, then maybe there is a little bit of a fire where the smoke is arising.
How much hot sauce is on the seat for him?
And I wouldn't say any at this stage. I'd say he's had a couple of really good seasons, but if they're going to get to 0-6, which they shouldn't, but if they get to 0-6,
they play North this way, don't they?
They do. If they lose against North, then start putting that Cholula right under his tuchus, because it's going to be firing up pretty quick. I would say something's amiss, something's going wrong. So I'm going to be watching that one with interest, because I think that's going to be a very interesting game. I mean, I would be watching that with interest if it wasn't on midday on Friday, but hey, that's what you get for living in the West. What about you? What are your thoughts on old Fags? Do you reckon he's got a bit of pressure on his back?
I think compared to where I would have put him at the start of the season in terms of coaches under pressure, compared to now.
Mhm.
He has either plummeted massively down if you're going on that scale or rocketed up if you're going on that scale. I don't think he'll see out the season if Brisbane don't make the finals. I think they'll chop him. I don't think you can look at this list and look at recent seasons and say this shouldn't end with a flag.
No, the list is stocked, man.
I can see this being, whether right or wrong, I can see a reaction being made if Brisbane either are in real trouble of making finals or just missing out on finals. I think that's a problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a problem for Fagan. I think it's a problem for them. So we'll see what happens with that in the coming weeks. But let's talk about Collingwood because, as you said, the mojo is back to an extent.
Yes.
Are they able to kick on with it now? In your eyes,
I have a feeling they will. I think they needed a jump start. I think they were kind of running on fumes at the start of the season, and I think this week showed they've got some fuel back in the tank, and they're going to go for it pretty hard. I mean, I'm not too sure who they've got coming up. Obviously, we'll go through this at the end, but they are playing Hawthorn, so they should
Hawthorn on the Sunday.
Hawthorn on the Sunday. So again, like that's a win. That's again they should win. And if they want to really consolidate the efforts this week, they should win by a large margin just to kind of show that they've got that kind of that fire back in the belly. But the mojo is back. I think they can maintain it. I can think they can start building their season from here. You know, it's the first win of the season for them, which is good because I think whichever team came out of this without the win, we were going to be like, oh boy, what is happening? But at least with Collingwood, like, there's still a bit of cohesion. Like even though they weren't playing their best footy, there was still some cohesion, which I don't get that feeling from Brisbane. So no, I think Collingwood will kick on. I think they'll do well in the next few rounds and kind of set themselves back up in the 8 sooner rather than later.
No, agreed.
Yeah. Do you agree, Jesse? Do you agree with me? I think that's
I do.
Yeah.
It's probably a sign that I'm wrong in all fairness.
100%. Yeah. No, you'd never back me in. Never back me in. Although, no, it's all right. I won't talk about that now. I was going to start talking about my dodgy punt. I'll do that later. Okay.
Oh, Luke, just keep your feet. It's not that hard.
It was a rainy game.
Been watching too many tapes of Bradley Hill, I reckon.
That's probably true. We're moving on to our game at number 2 for the round. North Melbourne 12-9-81 defeated by Carlton 21-11-137. I believe this is the first time 20 goals has been kicked this season in a game.
Yes.
So that's pretty big for Carlton. And Jesse, your initial thoughts on this game?
I'd say there were bigger floggings this week than this. So the 56-point margin is probably fair for Carlton, but slightly unfair on North. I actually think they played really well. Mm-hmm. They just simply don't have the tank to run out 4 quarters, which is going to be talked about a bit with a couple of teams coming up. They're not at the stage where they can run out 4 quarters, so they will get flogged in more games than they won't. Mm-hmm. However, I'd be a lot happier if I was a North Melbourne supporter right now than I would be with a couple of teams around them. I think they've got enough of a core playing group developing that you can say a 10-goal loss to Carlton, that on paper sucks, but I can be proud as a North Melbourne fan of the way we played.
And that's the thing, like they
would be my take out of that.
And it's true. Like North's had this problem all year so far. It's the 4 quarters. Don't have the tank. They'll have passages of play that look really, really schmick, and they'll keep up. They'll keep up with Carlton for a good half, and then Carlton the second half just went, okay, see you later, bye bye. They couldn't really. They had nothing to answer Mackay and Curnow up front. They were just too big and too strong for their defenders. And when you've got 2 guns like that in your forward line taking marks and being given like free kicks, and they were free kicks, and giving away cheap 50s, some undisciplined stuff, then it's going to be a recipe for disaster. But I tend to agree. Like the scoreline is flattering on Carlton. I think there is a lot of good stuff for North. But there's one thing I wanted to ask you about, a particular little tussle in the game, Jesse. Now, there was at one stage where Larkey was chased down by McGovern, chased down quite well, and as you do in football, you stand up after a tackle, the person's on the ground, give him a little bit of a shove, bit of how's it going? Then Larky, the big old brute that he is, reaches up, grabs McGovern by the scruff of his jersey, and just pulls him headfirst into the turf. Like McGovern's head just goes whack straight into the ground. Right now,
Yep.
does that potentially get looked at as something that's going to be, given the whole concussion stuff, is that going to be issues for old mate Larky?
I think we'd know by now if it was.
True.
So I'm going to go with no. However, what I will say is I wouldn't want to be making a habit of that. I don't mind it in terms of a bit of biff in the football.
Not me either.
But at the same time, I think the precedent needs to be, if you're going to instigate and be involved, like you did, if you're going to be involved in a tussle, the head is off limits.
Yeah.
Jumper punching is fine, whatever is fine, bit of roughhousing, do what you need to do. But if there's a concussion out of it, you're on the line for 2 weeks minimum.
Yeah. 100%.
You sit the same time he does. So 2 weeks minimum.
100%. And I think it's, I was actually just impressed by Lucky's strength, to be honest. It was like effortless how he just pulled him down.
Boy.
He's a big boy. But yeah, I was just watching it. I was like, Jesus Christ almighty. How's he done that? But no, I tend to agree. And you're right. If it's, we've already heard about one other suspension that we'll talk about later on that's already been laid down for one of the other teams. So you're right. We would have known by now. So play on, fair bump. All right. Moving on to our Fremantle Dockers, 9-15-69, defeating Adelaide 4-10-34 in what was surely game of the round, Jesse. Sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face at all. My goodness me. This game was not good. It's not one that we're going to put onto the highlight reel for the year. I think it's fair to say.
No.
For either team.
You know what? I actually disagree there.
Oh, okay. Go.
I disagree.
Okay, why?
Because this is one of the most complete four-quarter performances that Fremantle have had under Justin Longmuir in terms of, as a Fremantle fan who expects the worst, after about 10 minutes of the game, I didn't fear Adelaide. One bit.
Okay.
They had all the offensive terror of a Port Jackson shark with no teeth. They were awful. They were absolutely horrific. But Fremantle comfortably held them that entire game. I think in the relativity of things, I mean, they've doubled their score in a low-scoring game.
Yep.
If both teams weren't genuinely horrific at using the ball, I think Fremantle win by 10 goals.
Yeah.
And that's even with Adelaide kicking poorly, because I don't want to use this as an exercise to pump air into Fremantle's tires and dump on Adelaide. I actually want to do the opposite, because that was a very complete performance by Fremantle. But I think Adelaide are in free fall a little bit, and they've been caught at the wrong time and had a terrible day at the office. Tex Walker, I can't ever remember him playing that badly in any game that I've ever seen. Nope. Pierce not only shut him down defensively, but was generating offensively. Guys like Aish had 28 almost unblemished disposals. Hayden Young had a career best game. Mm-hmm. Jai Miss was barely sighted, yet still managed to dominate. This is a real problem for Adelaide, because they were comprehensively outplayed in my books. And again, that's not coming from a pro Fremantle bias. I probably have a bias against Fremantle when we talk about on this podcast.
That's true. Yes, you do.
Analysing against the obvious. But shut up, Liam.
Yeah. I mean, Draper and Sharp look pretty good too.
Sharp, I was very nervous about Sharp coming in as being best 22. He's solid. Draper, I think you made the comment, is that Michael Johnson out there? Yeah. Potentially a bit of jest, but there was a bit of quality about him there. I think he's going to be a quality player in time. Oh yeah, he's going to get the season now that Oscar McDonald's gone for surgery. Yeah, so he's probably going to get the season.
Yep.
I think he's coming good, but yeah, Fremantle comfortable, very good start for them. Worried about them next week. Adelaide, it all seems to have just gone awry, and I think Matty Nix may be sitting fairly close to Fagan on the Cayenne Pepper hot seat,
the source
for
list,
coaches in a few weeks' time, if this isn't corrected.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Like, it's probably the first game where I didn't see for a panic That's not true. That's obviously being descriptive. But for a long time, like we expect Freo to kind of not shit the bed, but get a bit panicky and start doing silly things or doing the spray and pray, the kick and hope. But it's good to see that their footy IQ is going up a little bit as a team. Like the unit is kind of working together a lot better, which is always nice to see. But yeah, for a team that I thought would be challenging this year, Adelaide have been disappointing to say the very least. Where do they turn it around though? Like where do they?
Honestly, looking at the way they played on Friday, I think they struggle massively without Tex.
Okay.
He looks to be so much more vital than I perhaps thought he was to Adelaide's success in season 2024, because he was comfortably outplayed on Friday by Pearce, and Adelaide did not seem to have an alternative. They kicked 4 goals all game?
Yeah, 4-10.
They struggled massively without having a Tex level influence in that forward line. And look, we'd all love a fit and firing Tex Walker in our forward lines. I think it's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about Taberner as well, Liam.
He's showing some good signs, my friend. Old Tabs.
I've always been a Taberner defender.
Mm-hmm.
I've always made that, I think, fairly clear. I think he plays, to quote our senior coach, he plays a role, and he adds some dynamism to our team that we otherwise don't have without him. He's starting, fingers crossed he stays injury-free for Fremantle's sake, he's starting to show where his value is, and that is being a goal a game, goal and a half a game key forward who can cover the 90 metres between the goal square and the wing consistently for the 85% time on ground that he gets. And that's a real string to Fremantle's bow if he can keep doing that.
And also a string to that as well. Like there was a few times he was like in the goal square going for marks, just tapped it to advantage. And it was good to see our Smalls run onto it. Like too often we get to see like Freo players like moths to a flame, just all go for the ball and then it bounces out and the other team go and rebound the other way. I can't remember if Sonny or if it was Freddie, but one of them like took a knockdown from Tabs because he couldn't mark it. So Tabs just tapped it down. One of our Smalls ran through. It's nice to see that that's starting to come into our game as well. So, no, good win for Freo, all said and done. Obviously, doubled the score, which pretty much all happened in the fourth quarter. But you'll take it, won't you? You'll take that any day of the week. All right, moving on to a game that we both tipped correctly, and I was the only one in my competition to do so. Jesse, were you the only one to do so? I'm not too sure. Essendon 10-11-71, defeating St Kilda 9-13-67. God, if you're a Saints fan, you've got to be frustrated with that game.
I think that's just St Kilda's level, though, isn't it? They're not a finals team.
Do you know who?
Or if they are, it's a low tide this year.
Do you know who they remind me of, St Kilda? They kind of remind me of Freo circa the last 5 years. Like you really have no idea which team's going to rock up. You have no idea which one's going to actually turn up to play the game. So, it can be exciting, but, I wouldn't say that they were necessarily outplayed by Essendon, potentially the opposite, but they just couldn't.
No, but they had that game in their keeping for almost the entirety and couldn't keep it. Yep. Which is a massive problem in what is going to be a clump between probably about 6 through 13.
Yeah.
So St Kilda, they have a lot to do. Yes, they beat Collingwood. That seems to be their second premiership, the way they carried on during the week. So good for them. But I don't think looking at this game that you can say, yeah, they're going to kick on and go on with it. They were poor, I thought. If you can't close out games against sides that don't really have a lot to offer, which I don't think Essendon particularly do, with the exception of Zach Merritt, who is potentially having a career best season this year and is looking very good. I can't get excited. I mean, I can't get really excited about either of those teams, to be honest. But
no, but you're right.
That's a bigger torpedo through the stern for St Kilda than it is a rocket up the table for Essendon, if that analogy
Makes
sense. Went kind of nautical and aeronautical there, which is fun.
It is fun. I had fun. I hope everyone else at home is having fun as well. But you're right, though. St Kilda.
I doubt it.
No, well, we'll see. St Kilda, if they are going to consider themselves any sort of finals chance or contender, those are the games they got to win. And if they can't do it, then it's yeah. I mean, not much more to say about that game. I wouldn't have thought. Jesse, anything else for that one? Probably
not. No. But speaking of finals contenders, this was some game. I'm so happy that I got to watch this game of football on Saturday night. Port Adelaide 89, defeated by Melbourne 96. What a game of football! We'll start with the losers because the victors goes the second part of the wrap. Port Adelaide. I think they were simply beaten by a side that perhaps has their backs against the wall and are really fighting on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Does this damage them too much, this loss, do you think?
Port Adelaide, not at all.
Is there more to it than just the 4 premiership points?
I think so. I think that was a game that showed two premiership contenders playing each other at a high level, at a professional level that you'd expect from two teams who are going to be contending. And it's kind of what we've lacked this season, I think. We haven't really had a game like this where it's just been like, oh, okay, these two teams actually know what's going on. Now, obviously, you got to string that across.
This is the benchmark.
Yeah, that's right. And so, obviously, it's still early days in the season, but if Port Adelaide and Melbourne can both continue that level of football throughout the rest of the year, then I was wrong about Melbourne at the start of the season. I had them not making the finals. That's top 4 performance right there. You know what I mean? Like, so if they can keep this rolling on, Port Adelaide included, then yeah, they're going to be tough for anybody any week. It's just a matter of if they can and if they do.
Yep, no, 100% agree. I thought both forward lines looked really good. A few bizarre moments. Asava, don't stand having hot chips and Powerades with the fans in row A, mate. You're on the goal line.
What was he doing? I watched that game today, and he took the mark behind the goal line, so he gave away a goal. And then his other teammate came over to him. His other teammate came over to him and said, "Why don't you just punch it?" And he was laughing. I reckon he thought it wasn't a goal. He must have felt like a right fool when that review came back, and it was just like, oh. That was weird, Asava. What are you doing?
It was weird. And look, I mean, ultimately, it becomes a 2-point game. If that's... Yeah. Well, actually, it becomes a 1-point game, sorry, because you're going to wipe off 6 points there as opposed to 5. So, yeah, it becomes a 1-point game. Obviously not enough to change the result, but, it's one of those things where we talked about momentum in the Port Adelaide game last week, actually, with the touched off the boot call.
Yep.
Or non-call, rather. So, it's funny how these momentum swings change, but it's quite interesting as well because I didn't necessarily think the Port Adelaide's win against Richmond last week was that impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably changed in hindsight. And then you give Melbourne the points here. I think these two teams are your 1 and 2 seeds at the moment, or certainly in that top 3 seedings.
Definitely in the top 3. They have to be now. But again, it's only one round, so we can't get too carried away with it. But let's need that up. Okay, sorry. Just doing some logistical things on the back end. Apologies. No, but you look at that. That's huge for Melbourne, though, based on everything that's happening for them at the moment in the back end. Like getting that win and what's that, the second or third for the year, they're not showing any signs of that actually being any sort of hindrance on their preparation, on their gameplay, on their team cohesion. Like it's huge for them just to kind of, remove the monkey a little bit. So yes,
they're getting on with the job, and you have to respect that from the playing group. They're getting on with the job, and there's a lot of young players in that group too that weren't there for that 2021 premiership or were emerging during that time. So you've got to respect the way that the younger guys are stepping in. Van Rooyen's looking like being a solid player. Trent Rivers is really, I know he was in that 2021 premiership side, but he is really starting to find his way and becoming Salem light, which is perfect for where they are now because when Salem goes, he goes up to being Salem.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got a good player there in McVie as well, Judd McVie. I think he's going to be a handy player. Neil Bullen seems to have increased his output this year as well. I know he's been around for a bit, but he seems to have stepped up too.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Ben Brown.
Yeah.
And where he fits into all this, because I feel like we go through phases of forgetting that he exists.
Yeah. I think, do you reckon he doesn't fit in the team like how Rory Lobb's playing VFL because he doesn't fit in the Western Bulldogs team at the moment? Do you reckon he's Ben?
We need to talk about that in a second too.
Well, we will. But do you reckon that's a similar situation though? Like there's no like real spot for him because I mean, what did he kick? He still kicked 3, didn't he? In this game.
I think you have to play him. I think
Yeah.
Brown is good enough of a forward. I accept the argument that he's quite similar to Van Rooyen in terms of style.
Mm-hmm.
But simply put, he is damaging enough as a forward and enough of a target as a forward to play him. I think he helps. I think he makes Van Rooyen better. I think he makes Frisch better. I think he makes the entire forward group better. So I think you play Brown. I agree he's not a glove-like fit, but I think there's something that can make that work.
Hey, if you're winning big games of football like that and he's in your side, then it's hard to argue, really, isn't it? It's hard to argue that it might be actually not a bad fit at all. But no, hopefully more games like that coming up in the next few rounds so we can enjoy football across the board. Enjoy football like we did watching this game, the Western Bulldogs 16-10-106, defeating the West Coast Eagles 3 goals 12-30. Oh no! Oh boy! Oh dear!
Now, I've tried to remain as positive and as encouraging as I can about West Coast the opening rounds of the season. I thought they showed a bit against GWS. I thought there was enough there to say, okay, it's not going to be a very fun season for West Coast, but there's development happening here. This was a really difficult watch for a number of reasons, but we need to talk about the different bands of what West Coast have.
Yes.
West Coast we have the hanger-honorers, so the 2018 Premiership group, so guys like Darling, Gaff, who obviously didn't play, Cripps, Yo, although he is starting to play very well. I know it wasn't in there, but I'm going to throw Kelly in that group as well, just in terms of seniority. You've got the senior players there. Then you've got that middle band, which is guys like Waterman and guys like Petrocelli, the players that needed to take the next step for the sake of the club. And then you've got the children.
Yes.
The children are doing their best, and at some points they are playing some good football.
Yeah.
Jamison defensively looks like a very good option for them. I think he's benefiting massively from the tutelage of McGovern, and I think they found a position for him that works. Please don't ever let him kick the ball again. It's like Alex Pearce. If he marks it, you run past and you get the handball because he cannot kick. I think McGovern is arguably having a career best season, and that's because he is having to do everything in that defense. Literally everything. And he is still coming out as their best player every week. So, you could make the argument he's in career best form. I don't know where Cole and Barras are at mentally and physically, because they simply have not turned up defensively at all. They've been awful. Kelly is getting the numbers, but is not hurting opposition players or opposition teams that much. Yo looks really good. It's great to see Yo back to his, or certainly back to a level where he can have a positive impact. I think that's a real positive for West Coast this season. But gee, what do we do about Jack Darling, Liam? Because he is really struggling at AFL level. He looks
slow. He looks like he doesn't really belong there anymore, unfortunately. And he's been a great servant for the club for a long time. But this is what I mean when they've just got to just down tools on some of the older players and bring in the new ones, because he was getting in the way. It looked like he was just in the way a lot of the time rather than actually doing anything effective. He was just there. And when hardball gets, you've got the young kids going in hard for it, and he's just kind of fumbling around trying to get it. I don't know, man. For me, it's a case of Gibney looked okay. Harley Reid looked fine. But defensively, when the little passages of run are actually really nice. When they happen, you're like, oh, okay, they can do it. Like a few coast to coast.
Simpson seems to have switched that mindset this year and said, go for it. If you get the ball in open space, run and attack and get on the ball. Because I agree. I actually think that's the main overarching positive for West Coast this season is that their attacking brand of football when it comes off is legitimately quite good.
Yep.
Their problem is that they just don't have enough quality on the field, either whether that's quality in terms of developing or qualities in terms of past their primes, or just simply not good enough to be there. I want to talk about Harley Reid. How very West Australian of me. But I want to talk about the attention that Harley Reid gets from opposition players, because we saw Bontempelli match up on him for a bit on Sunday. In my opinion, the fact that he is getting the attention he is either going to make Harley Reid or it is going to break Harley Reid. And I sincerely hope for West Coast it is the former, and they can get their next number 9 generational talent that they frankly desperately need. But you have to wonder, is playing him in the guts right now the smartest option? Nick Dacos was cuddled through his first couple of years at Collingwood. Hayden Young's now making his transition into being a bona fide midfielder at Fremantle. It's not an uncommon pathway now to see players, promising young players. Sheasel's done it at North Melbourne as well. Start as halfbacks, even on the wing, and then come in. I understand they need the grunt that Reid provides, and it's pretty mental. They need a 19-year-old to come in and play that role. But is playing Harley in the guts what he needs, not necessarily what West Coast need right now?
Well, that's you're saying just then. You're like, well, for the benefit of West Coast, hopefully it makes him. For the benefit of Harley Reid, I hope it makes him, because from like you said, he's a young fella, and those other teams and other players you were talking about, and even North Melbourne to an extent, had, I guess, the luxury of putting those players back first before moving them into the midfield, whereas Eagles have, what else do they have? Not much else, unfortunately. They've got nothing up forward. They've got nothing up back. They've got nothing, through the guts is where their play actually happens, it seems. So if that's where everything's happening, maybe that is the best place for them. But look, we can't go on too much more about the West Coast Eagles. We'll talk about the Western Bulldogs. Okay, nothing to take out of that game for them. We can move on, unless you'd like to talk about Rory Lobb really quickly.
I would. I actually would like to talk about Rory Lobb semi-seriously here.
Of course,
First of all, yes, it is very very funny that he's playing VFL. However, is this a real problem for the Western Bulldogs? Because I can't imagine he's on cheap coin there, given what he was on at Fremantle.
No, not at all.
So it always was a bizarre fit when they got him, and my sense at the time was, right, well, they're losing Norton or English. That hasn't happened, and now they're paying a lot of money to sit someone in the VFL. And frankly, as much as he's probably not beloved at Fremantle, he is too good of a forward to not be playing AFL football.
Agree.
So where to from here? Because he's going to have to go to a fourth club.
Yeah.
Unless there's a coaching change at the Western Bulldogs, I don't see him forcing his way back into this team, because there isn't room for him. And that Ugle-Hagen's locked down his spot. He's starting to hit his straps. Norton's obviously Norton. English is English. I don't think you can play him. Sam Darcy seems to have found his groove now as well. So he doesn't have a place in the Western Bulldogs side.
He's never looked,
which then makes me want to talk.
Let me say this. He's never looked overly convincing at the Bulldogs.
No.
Like not one time since he's been there.
Not
he had moments of convincing nature when he was at Freo, but as soon as he moved over there, I haven't seen him do. Maybe he had one or two good games max.
Let's not revise history as much as he's not very well liked here. His 2022 at Fremantle was very, very good.
Oh, stellar.
It was a commanding forward presence who, without Taberner for a lot of that season, stood up and helped Fremantle make finals. Let's not revise history there. His performance against the Bulldogs elimination final was one of the best individual performances by a key forward Fremantle has had outside of guys like Pavlich and Modra. He was excellent in that elimination final. He is too good of a player to be playing VFL in front of 2,000 fans, 85% of which are over the age of 60. So where do we go from here? I think this is potentially your strongest case for mid-season trades.
Oh, okay.
Because how many teams? And look, I've undenied about mid-season trades for pretty much as long as they've been touting it. I don't like the Americanization of the sport, but I also think there are far more offensive measures that we put in recent years than a mid-season trade period. I see the argument where you can look at a side desperate for a key forward. I think St Kilda is one that could desperately use some help for Max King. I think Richmond, now that they've got no Tom Lynch for 12 weeks, would be in that boat. You've got clubs now. I mean, West Coast, I don't think he'd come back to WA, but West Coast are screaming for one, aren't they? Obviously, you have to work out how that goes with salary caps and the likes, and obviously trades are a two-way street. Can you trade for draft picks? Those type of arguments. But I think you look at players like Lobb and you say, he is now going to spend potentially one of his last prime years playing in the VFL. And that is, and again, I'm not the president of Roy Lobb's fan club by any stretch of the imagination, but I do actually feel for him in that, because I don't think necessarily that's his fault. I think he may have been sold a lemon by the Bulldogs. It was always a weird trade going in, but it seems looking back like Fremantle have finally gotten on the end of a trade deal that wasn't horrendous for them.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. That was interesting to see where that goes with old Rory, because I agree with you. Like, when I found out he was playing VFL, I thought he was injured. When I found out he was playing VFL, I was like, oh, well, that doesn't seem like that's right at all. Anyway, we must move on. We always seem to spend most time talking about the Eagles for some reason. And whenever the Eagles games are on, we spend more time on them than anybody else.
I think it's how like our anti-bias corrections coming in. Like, we don't want to seem like we're biased against West Coast, so we try to just. But you know what? At the end of the day, we're both from WA. We're going to talk more about WA teams because we're oversaturated with the media.
That's true.
It makes sense.
Yeah, we get too much Melbourne stuff usually. That's fine. Oh, look, Melbourne team. Richmond 11-16-82, defeating Sydney 11-11-77. Richmond been ramping up the last few weeks, and this week they kind of made it all come together pretty well.
I'm so confused about that Gold Coast game.
Which one? The round, was that round opening round?
Round zero.
Round zero, yeah.
I mean, that Richmond game and that Richmond level of quality compared to this Richmond game and this level of quality, different hemispheres.
Yeah, vastly.
And the thing is, I still think they're doing it without their players actually playing that well. Shai Bolton seems to be struggling.
Yep.
And yet they're winning games. I mean, we'll see how they go now without Lynch for 3 months. And that is a horrible hamstring injury. So hopefully he can bounce back from that. Noah Bolter out for 3 to 5 as well. So
that's huge also.
There's a cost there.
Liam Baker out for a couple of months.
One. Just
one
for Liam.
Just one. Yeah.
Which we need to talk about because I think it should have been 2.
Yeah.
However, before we get into raining on Richmond's parade, that's a huge win for them. Sydney couldn't quite tick the MCG box they needed to. I don't think they played badly, but they're going to need to play better than that in finals, I think. They're going to need to find that extra gear.
Oh, look, I don't think from home. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be too worried about Sydney just yet. They've shown some really good signs at the start of this year. They didn't play terribly in this game either. It wasn't a case of playing bad. It was just that Richmond definitely came to play and outplayed them on this day. So much like with Port Adelaide as well, like, I'm not too worried about Sydney. I think they'll bounce back just fine. But Richmond were superb. And you said this last week when we were doing our tips. I think you tipped Sydney, but you were like, oh, but Richmond played the MCG pretty well, and they proved that with aplomb on this day. But let's talk about old Liam Baker. So we've got this year has been scrutinised pretty heavily for head-eye contact, scrutinised pretty heavily for any sort of action that's going to cause damage to another player. He looked like he was ricochet flying off the top rope doing a front forearm, AJ style. Like he just let out completely front on and then just chucked his forearm directly out into Millicom's face. What? Why are you doing this, man? Like this is, you got to get weeks. I don't see how Richmond can try and argue that down at the tribunal. I don't see how.
Well, he's only got one.
I know he does, but I think
they've done it right.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to try and get none because there was no lasting damage.
Well, here's the problem. Are we serious about it or are we not? Because I don't think, and this is not a crack at Liam Baker at all by any stretch of the imagination. This is not an anti-Richmond or anti-Baker vendetta. But I'd like to think that we've been fairly consistent on this podcast by saying, right, concussion, it's 4. Head high but not concussion, it's 2. Very nasty one, case by case.
Yeah,
I think that's been a fairly consistent stance on this podcast since we started it.
Yep.
So to me, this falls into that no lasting impact, but head high and off the ground. That's pretty cut and dry 2 weeks for me.
Yeah.
If we're serious about it, if we're not serious about it, then that's fine. Give him 1. Give him 0. Who cares? Yeah. It's just a number. But look, the point is out of that for me is that we haven't even gone a month consistently adjudicating it in my view, and that is going to cause lasting impact. I don't like the message this sends. Again, not an attack on Baker, not an attack on the Richmond Football Club. They are entitled to appeal if they so desire. However, it feels like the whole we're serious about it from a week ago with Peter Wright is gone again. And we're just like, oh, well, it didn't actually do anything. Oh, well.
Yeah. So that seems to be the caveat in the whole situation. Does it have any lasting impact? Yes, lots of weeks. Does it not? Silly boy. Don't do it again. I mean, to be fair,
we know that CTE. Sorry to cut you off, Liam, but I think we need to get this point across. We know that CTE isn't an instant thing all the time. It's cumulative. So to say there's no lasting impact for us is fine because we're just 2 people having a podcast.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, for the AFL to come out and say that in terms of the decision is disingenuous. Sure, Melican may not be showing concussion symptoms right now, but if he in a few weeks cops another head knock for whatever reason, that head knock may have some extra side effects as a result of a previous head knock from a few weeks before. I don't like it. I think with the amount of science and information we have around concussions, both in Australia and around the world, to use the argument of, oh, well, he played the rest of the game, I can't see that being an argument in 2-3 years' time if we're serious about concussion.
Yep. I agree with you. It's that if they're going to get rid of the action, if they want to get rid of it altogether, then the fact that this actually got 1 is probably not a terrible thing. I still agree with you that if they want to be super serious about it, they've got to do just a minimum blanket. You do the action, you get 2. But given that last year, this wouldn't have got anything.
Yeah.
Look, yeah, it's something moving in the right direction, but we can't downplay Richmond's win. It was a fantastic win. 1 on the board for Sydney in the loss column, but I'm sure they won't be ruining that too much. Last game of the round that finished but an hour ago, an hour after we were expecting it to finish. Hawthorn 10-10-70 defeated by the Cats 17-4, 106 Lightning. A lightning delay. We always love a cheeky lightning delay, a 46-minute lightning delay, don't we, Jesse? Isn't it fun?
It was great. I got to go for my run while I was waiting. It was fantastic.
It works out nicely for you then.
Actually rather suited me.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you, Melbourne, and your terrible weather. God, you do have terrible weather, don't you?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And when it's really bad, it's like bad. It's like super bad. But look, listen, Geelong convincing win in the end here. They were very accurate, which definitely helped the scoreboard. But look, I like the Hawks. This is what we were kind of expecting them to play like. The last week was. It's good that last week seems like it was the anomaly. Last week they tried a really, really bizarre game tactic that completely backfired, and everyone was just like, "What the hell is this rubbish?" They're playing uncontested footy, 51 uncontested marks in a quarter of footy for no result at all. I think the result was 0-1. This week they came out and they took it on. It's almost like it's similar to the West Coast. It's almost like the coach. kind of came out and said, just go for it, guys. Stuff it. Just go for a run. And you could see that even when they'll kind of, this is where they're going to tweak it a little bit. They were playing on instances where they definitely should not have been doing that. They were like,
yes, that was very funny.
That was funny. Forward 50, it's like, play on. It's like, well, I mean, set shot for goal would have been nice too. Probably could have stopped at that one, but I appreciate the effort. Geelong were professional, got the job done. Actually, Joe, will say this though, Hawks look pretty good in the wet. They were pretty good at the start of the wet. That chaos footy that you get in wet weather footy, they were chucking legs in. They were just going hell for leather, which I appreciated, because sometimes you see teams kind of go into their shell a little bit, especially when it's a deluge like it was today. But they seem to come out and just go. They came out and just went, you know what? Start of the fourth quarter, we're going to take it on, and you got to like to see that from a young emerging team. Thoughts on the game, Jesse?
Yeah, echo it. Geelong, just consummate professionals, as you alluded to, Liam. They know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They can play 4 quarters of footy. They can get the results. Hawks aren't at the 4 quarters of footy stage just yet, but I like them. They're a fun side to watch. And outside of Port versus Melbourne, this was game of the round for me. I really enjoyed watching this game of footy. It was a great Monday afternoon. Not even Brian Taylor can ruin it. That's very impressive, and I commend both teams for that. But look, I think with Hawthorn, patience is a virtue with them. Much like North Melbourne, much like West Coast, 4 quarters is beyond them at this stage. However, there's enough pieces there, and I got to say, Ginnivan looks like he's finally hitting his groove. So, Chol as well. A couple of those forwards now for Hawthorn are finally starting to get that momentum going, get used to the setups, the structures, and I think you're going to start seeing results from that. So don't be surprised if Hawthorn just spring an upset in the coming weeks over quality sides. They may even be able to do it at Gather Round, which we need to talk about. Liam, unless you have anything else to add about this game now.
Oh, now? Do I have to talk about it now?
Now.
No.
Right now.
Can Ginnivan buy a free kick? Probably not. I think his history's his history's catching up to him. Yeah, his history's catching up to him. I hate that.
I hate that.
Oh no,
me
too. Oh no, 100%. I completely agree. But it's I think in the rain delay, in the little rain break, they were counting the amount of free kicks given for the same thing for other players in that match, and that weren't given to Ginnivan. I think there were 5 or 6 different instances where he probably should have been given it, and he wasn't. So maybe that's just the Ginnivan effect. But I agree, if it's high, call it. But hey, that's all I've got to say about that. Quickly before we move on to the next round, our tips this week, 5 each again. God, we're doing so well. Some slight differences in our tips, but we all ended up at the same result anyway. 5 a pop puts us at 19 apiece for the year. And very quickly going through the ladder, you've got the Giants on top still, 3-3. No, 3 played 3 wins. I'll just say undefeated, much easier. Dockers in second place. We'll take that for now. Thank you very much. End the season, blow the siren.
End the season.
End the season, blow the siren. Currently second spot, undefeated as well. Demons, who are not undefeated but are currently in third place. Cats, undefeated, fourth place. Weird. Swans, who have got the 1 loss. Blues in 6th, undefeated. Dogs and Power round out the top 8. And then you got Bombers, Suns, Saints, Magpies, and Tigers. And then the winless Lions, the winless Crows, Kangas, Hawks, and Eagles rounding out the bottom of the ladder. So there we go. That is the end of the ladder. And now we move on to Jesse's favorite round of the year. It is Gather Round time. Everybody get excited for Gather Round. Jesse, are you excited for Gather Round? Okay, fair enough. We'll move on. Adelaide versus Melbourne on Thursday night at Adelaide Oval. Adelaide versus Melbourne. Who have you got, Jesse, and why? How many points?
I can't complain about Gather Round first. Okay. Melbourne to win this one. I'm going to say Melbourne by by 29 points. I think they've proven they can win in Adelaide. They have proven that they are not necessarily being derailed by off-field issues. And Adelaide have proven they are in almighty trouble this season. So Melbourne, I think a fairly comfortable start to a round that wastes everyone's time. Liam.
I think Melbourne will get through in a round that I think is really nice for the game. I think they're going to get through and win by about 45 points. I think it's going to be an absolute drubbing. I don't think Adelaide need to show something. If they don't, it's going to be a mess. So hopefully they do.
Yes.
But Melbourne by 45 for me. Moving on to second game. The first of two on Friday, Brisbane versus North Melbourne in lovely Norwood. I don't know where that is, but I'm sure it's lovely.
We played there last year. It's a Gold Coast. It would be lucky, and it'd be fortunate to host Minganoo versus Dalwallinu in the Bush League. Awful ground.
Okay.
Awful ground. I don't understand why we're playing AFL matches here.
Well,
it infuriates me.
For the community, Jesse, for the community. Brisbane versus North. Do we have to spend too much time on this one? I'd like to see North do well, but okay,
yes, we do actually, Liam.
Okay, go, Jesse.
We do. And it's got nothing to do with who's playing either. Bonus Total Eclipse of the Dart. Why on earth are we having a game for Western Australian audiences at 2:10 on Friday? This may come as a shock to you over East. Some of us have jobs over here. Hello? Like, is that not just a gigantic middle finger to West Australians? I think it's a disgrace, frankly.
Yeah, I think I can see why they. I can see why they Brisbane versus North Melbourne in that slot. I mean, if we look back to last year's gather round, on your point, Jesse, if I'm not mistaken,
we had it, didn't we?
We had it at 3:30 in the afternoon. It was Freo's game, so they've learnt their lesson in that regard. At least for Brisbane and North, they'll be on the East Coast. They can watch it at a regular time. I'm okay with it. We can watch it later. Brisbane versus North, is that going to be a good game? Who knows? Probably not. Unless, look how grumpy you are. Look how grumpy your little face is.
That's angered me again.
Look, I think Brisbane should win this, should get their first win of the season, but I would love to see North just pull something out of the bag, just because it would be hilariously entertaining if they did.
It'd be great. But yes, I think Brisbane should have enough here. Although Norwood makes it interesting because Norwood's a weird ground. It's not atypical AFL ground. So I don't know if this is as cut and dry as Brisbane win cake and coffee, because we can't have dinner because we're playing at 2:10 Perth time.
That's
so
right.
You can have cake and afternoon scones.
Lovely afternoon tea.
Because what? Yes. Honestly.
We'll move on.
The game that is appropriate for West Australian audiences. Port Adelaide versus Essendon. This should be a bit of fun, actually, this game. Shut up, Liam. Stop riling me up about bloody gimmick round.
It's funny, though. It makes me happy, Jesse. Isn't that enough? All right, so we got Port Adelaide versus Essendon. Oh, my God.
Very careful.
What? Oh, what? Imagine this is what the podcast turns into, just us yelling at each other.
Now, let me tell you something, Liam.
No, I agree. This should be a fun one. Port Adelaide versus Essendon. If Essendon can keep up the run from last week or this week, however the case may be, then it should be an interesting game. But I think Port's going to be too strong for them, especially at Adelaide Oval during the gather round, which is Adelaide's favourite round of the year. Port Adelaide by 4 goals for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say Port Adelaide by 17 points. Essendon, I wonder if they'll go back to their Sydney tactics here. Mm-hmm. If they do, it might make the game very interesting.
That's a good point, because I don't think Port Adelaide will put up with that at all. I think Port Adelaide will just give it right back. Hey, wait, is Powell Pepper back now?
Charlie Dixon will try to consume someone.
And Powell Pepper's
I believe he will be, yes.
Oh, yeah. Go on, give him another 4. See what he does. Make him go crazy out there. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see if Essendon do go back to that kind of game style. I don't think they will. I think it would be silly for them to do it because it didn't work. And I think the teams with class are just going to see right through it. Like Papley said, a bit of a facade. So I think they'll try and play the game style they played against Saints this week and see if they can get the job done, because it definitely worked a lot better for them. In the end, Western Bulldogs versus Geelong on Saturday to kick us off at Adelaide Oval. Is that right? I think it's right.
Yes.
It is right. Yes, the double header at Adelaide Oval. That's right. Yes, hello. I'm back. Western Bulldogs versus Geelong. What do you say, Jesse?
Wait, hang on. Kick us off. Are we skipping 2 games, are we?
Apparently so. Go for it, Jesse. You take it away.
Well, we have West Coast versus Sydney in the Adelaide Hills at Mount Barker. They say the Hills have eyes. I don't think West Coast supporters will want to have theirs in for this game. Could be quite a rough one. with Sydney needing to hit back and get 4 points. Look, jesting aside, this is a pretty uncomfortable game for the Eagles. Sydney have a point to prove after their loss against Richmond, and in my view, they should get it done. I don't think it's very, very nice that West Coast fans have now had 2 consecutive 10:30 a.m. time slots in the space now of 6 days when this game is played. It is annoying when it happens to Fremantle, so it's only equally as annoying for them. And I don't know what the situation will be television-wise for this, but I know the Bulldogs game was delayed on free-to-air, which is a whole separate thing you could get me started on. If this is again delayed, they'll have to do this live because Fremantle play 3 hours later.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason they don't, that's a real problem, and that fixturing needs to stop.
I can see them pushing it back just to have it a double header, leading one game into the next potentially. That's the only reason I can see it being pushed back. But yeah, the game this week wasn't until I was having a beer at the pub in Seabird. It was on, and it was already 4 hours finished. So look, Sydney, can they put 200 past West Coast again? Probably not. But I think it's going to be it's going to be uncomfortable to watch regardless. Sydney by some margin. All right. Now is it Western Bulldogs versus Geelong, or have I missed another one?
No, it's the other one.
I haven't written it down apparently. Have I got 9 games here and not the right ones?
We have Fremantle versus Carlton, Lamb.
Oh, that's next.
The team that you support.
I've got them in the wrong order. That was next on my list. Okay, fine.
You fool. Fremantle versus Carlton at I'm not good at local times here. We'll go with 4:20 p.m. Victorian time at OW. 2 sides are in form. 2 sides that are winning games of football. One potentially higher than we thought they'd be. Another is doing everything they need to do. Liam, your thoughts here?
My thoughts are thus. This is going to be a game for us. It's actually going to show if we are contenders or not. That's the easiest way to put it. Brisbane, the start of the year, everyone would have been going, hello. But then having North and then having Adelaide, who are not doing very well, probably haven't really given us a barometer of the competition yet. Carlton will give us that barometer.
Yes.
So while I would love for us to see us pull it out, I still think Carlton are going to be a bit too strong for us. So I'm going to tip Carlton. But that works in my favour usually because when I tip against them, against the good teams, we usually win. So I will go for Carlton by 3 goals.
I'm going to say Carlton by 9 points. I think this is going to be a close game. I think Carlton have enough, though.
My heart couldn't take it. My God. Now is it Western Bulldogs versus Geelong?
Yes. You impatient boy.
The doubleheader at Adelaide Oval. I was just too excited about the doubleheader. This game could be actually more interesting than we think. I'm intrigued. Yeah. Bulldogs have strung a couple together now, so they want to keep that going. But Geelong are undefeated so far and are looking pretty good. So I think it's going to be very hard to look past the Cats in the domestic pet battle. So I'm going to go for the Cats in this instance. Jesse.
Yeah, I'm going with the Felines to beat the Dachshunds. I think it's a fairly winnable game for them. The Bulldogs, look, they seem to be chugging along quite nicely. Their forward line seems to be particularly going well. That gives them a chance to win games this season. I do think Geelong have enough there to pull it out. I'm going to say Geelong by 15 points. 15.
Oh, nice and close. Moving on to Sunday at Mount Barker, and Jesse will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure. Gold Coast Suns versus the GWS Gigantes, who let everyone know today they were changing their theme song. And took everyone a hot minute to realize what day it was today. It is the 1st of April. And what happens on that day? People play pranks and people do the funnies. That would never.
Well, I wish Gather Round was an April Fool's joke. Alas, it's not. GWS should win here. They are going very well. Gold Coast have shown some good form, but I think they're probably a little bit off where they need to be in order to be taking it toe-to-toe to GWS, although the neutral grounds are adding a bit of unknown into this, I think. So GWS, fairly confident saying they'll win, but again, we know that Gold Coast can get on rolls, and if they just blitz them for the first half, it could be a long way back.
I agree, but I don't think they're going to do that to GWS. I think GWS will win this quite handsomely and will remain atop of the table. That is my guess. Richmond versus St Kilda at Norwood. your favourite place on earth. What do you reckon, Jesse? Richmond keep it running or St Kilda bounce back?
Spoiler for the Dodgy Punts section of the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast.
Okay.
I think we might have potentially one of the best bets of the season here.
Oh.
I think Richmond at current odds of $3.73 versus $1.28 for St Kilda is a phenomenal bet.
What?
It is a bet that you could potentially have responsibly to level up WA share of the GST. Such is the quality of this option.
And why? Why is it that long? That doesn't make any sense.
Maybe Max King is going to come back and kick 15 goals.
Maybe.
Well, the fact that there's no forward line now for Richmond is a problem.
Yeah.
However, I don't think we've seen particularly sexy St Kilda football this season. Say that 3 times fast. To the point where it doesn't necessarily matter if Richmond only kick 70 points because St Kilda are going to struggle to do the same, or that'll be about their mark.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm quite happy to go Richmond here. I think they're a better list. I think they are looking like they're on the up, injuries aside. And we've seen in close games they can stick it out, whereas we've seen in close games St Kilda cannot. So Richmond, for me, quite happy to go with them, and I'm sure we'll be hearing about them in the Dodgy Punts section of the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast, Liam.
Looking forward to it. Look, just so we have something different for the tips and we don't do all the same thing, I'll jump on St Kilda. I don't really have a reason why, because I quite like how Richmond played last week and I think they can bounce back. But just so we're not doing the same thing all the time, Jesse, go on the Saints. Up the Saints. Let's go. All about it.
This might be their second premiership winning on Gather. Sorry, third premiership because they beat Collingwood.
That's right.
They're really racking up the trophy cabinet this year. Good on them. You do a great St Kilda.
On your Saints. All right, and finishing off with Collingwood versus Hawthorn on Sunday at Adelaide Oval. My tip is for another fun attempt by Hawthorn. But I think
that sounds so patronising.
I know, I didn't mean it to, but it's going to be fun to. I like watching Hawthorn. I like watching the young kids run and play. And if they play like they did today, they can challenge. But I think Collingwood will be too strong for them.
Yeah, agree. Hopefully it's a good game of football to gather around. But I do suspect that Collingwood will have enough petrol in the tank to go and see out Hawthorn here.
Agree. Okay, that's our tips for next week. That just leaves one thing to do, Jesse, and that is Le Dodgy Punt. Now, I came very close on like a 10-legger today. If only Luke Bruce had kicked a goal, I would have been.
And he fell over.
He fell over. I would have been, really confident in giving you guys a really cool 10-legger to go on, but I can't do that now because I didn't win. But Jesse's going to give you his tips for this upcoming week while I try and find and put something together for you as well.
Well, in the spirit of gather round, we're going to go three straight out results. We're going to go Melbourne to beat Adelaide. We are going to go Greater Western Sydney to beat Gold Coast, and we are going to put Richmond in the Dodgy Punt to beat St Kilda. That pays $8.50 or thereabouts. As always, gamble responsibly, but I think that's a 3-legger you can have that gives you a little bit of a chance of getting your money back. So let's hope we can get a result there. Just a little baby bit.
Just a little bit of money. Hopefully we can get something back. Now, God, what do I do here?
Oh, Liam.
I feel like I should just do this. I'm going to go to Fremantle versus Collingwood, and live for you right now, I'm going to put one together for you. Are you ready?
Okay. Are you? Okay, so that's in about, 6 weeks?
Fremantle versus Carlton? What did I say?
Fremantle versus Collingwood.
I was around 11. That's ages away. Yeah, futures. No, okay, Collingwood. Let's go. Okay, we're going to go Curnow for 3, Harry Mackay for 2. I think Jumpin' Jai's going to get 2. And don't interrupt
me. For those viewers and listeners at home, this is not how you gamble, by the way. Not how you do it.
No, this is how the dodgy punts do it. As in the dodgy punter, which is me, not Jesse. Jesse knows what he's doing. I do not. Okay, so wrong for 25. Do you know what? How about this? How about this? Rather than do this on the fly and give you this 8-legger that would pay 33.25 to 1, Do you know, I'm going to do it just for the content.
Give it.
I'll do it for the content. Then I'll think about it a better one and tell you. Kerno for 3, Mackay for 2, Amiss for 2, Sonny Walters for 2, Sarong 25, Patrick Cripps 25, George Shield for 20, and Luke Ryan for 20. Cheap. That's going to pay you 33.25 to 1. Gamble responsibly and don't do that. Okay, Jesse, it's been a long one. Let's wrap it up.
It has been. Yes, let's wrap it up. Happy Gather Round week to those who celebrate, not me. In saying that, though, there is some good games ahead. So I'm going to be down at Rebel Sport buying my 18-team Gather Round celebratory Guernsey. If you haven't seen it, it's not an April Fool's joke. It looked cool. You gather round apologist, Liam. You would say it looks cool. Deary me. I tell you what. If that multi gets up, I'll do the pod next week in the Gather Round Guernsey.
Okay, sounds good. Deal.
What have I done?
That's it. You've set yourself a nice little bet there, man. All right, guys, thank you very much for listening. Until next week, when we speak about Gather Round, I'm sure you'll get a really happy and spicy Jesse. Until then, make sure you follow us. Leave your comments down below. We're always looking forward to you guys getting in touch and commenting on the games and telling us what you think about what we're saying. But until next week, ciao for now. Say goodbye, Jesse.
No, goodbye, everyone. I'm still angry about Gather Round.